This video is going to rank all the bosses from Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. Let me explain. I did a playthrough of Superstar Saga quite recently and it made me want to remake my old ranking. While the video quality isn't terrible, my opinions have changed quite a bit. But even though my opinion has changed, I'm not sure if I'm able to talk about these bosses as in-depthly as I would with other games. While I will try, this game is definitely more basic compared to the other 4 Mario & Luigi games. Because of this, I need help from someone who is actually a fan of this game.
I've beaten this game about 5 or 6 times and I absolutely adore this game from the Mario & Luigi saga. I can help you iron out those uncertain feelings, Shroob. I go way back with this game.
Oh hey Slashstar, this dude is a real good friend of mine who actually has interesting, positive opinions about this game, so he seems perfect for this countdown.
Because your last Superstar Saga bosses video was a little indifferent?
Yeah, some enthusiasm would be nice for this one. So of course we do need some rules. The way we made this list is by us making our personal rankings and then averaging the results. When we had the occurrence of a tie, we broke the ties on where each boss should go. We also technically didn't include every single boss in this game on this list. We did not include any of the tutorial fights before Slashstar on this list. We also decided to combine the Koopalings into one entry because they are all so similar. The other boss that got included was Piranha Bean.
Really? Well, we both know where he would be.
Hey, don't be spoiling it!
How? It's at the bottom of the list. It's already here.
Just get him on the screen. Are you happy now?
Happy? I know you dragged me into this, but I'll personally vote pass on this boss. But let's do it. Let's give him a fair chance.
Well, we definitely did try to, but a boss that only has one brother and no unique attacks? What fair chance does this deserve?
Not much. Because Mario and Luigi games are revolved around brothers attacks, I can't endorse this boss too much. Because it's a cycle of simply using a single brother's attack, dodging the 2 spit attacks from the boss, and repeat. It can get monotonous really quickly. It feels like a tutorial battle from the start of the game.
For sure, and even from someone who likes the hand powers in this game a lot more than other people, it's a clear flaw that just makes this boss fight extremely boring. A lot of people would say that you guys should focus on the boss's attacks instead of what Luigi does, but your attacks are half of the boss fight for every single one of them here. If they are super repetitive and pretty boring at this point in the game, it's not going to be enjoyable to many people. And even if we go with that debate for this boss fight, Slashstar already mentioned that all you do is dodge simple projectiles, and yeah, it's perfectly accurate. One attack this late in the game is just pathetic, and the fact that it isn't interesting is just super disappointing.
Also, when I played this game the first time way back when I was a naive teenager, I didn't devote many stats into Luigi's attack power, which can in turn potentially turn this battle into what is a slog, into how long it takes for King Zor to move his butt in Ocarina of Time. Yeah, my poor 16-year-old self had to suffer through that.
When I played this game in my recent playthrough, I mainly focused on making every stat somewhat equal. So instead of having a very spongy boss like Slashstar, I actually had a joke boss fight that I took out in 3 turns flat. It probably took less than a minute to beat, which just left no room for me to be impressed or have fun. I really don't think many people are a fan of this boss fight, so it makes sense for it to be at the bottom of this list.
Oop, your least favorite boss, Shroob. Destroy him!
It's not like I hate this boss fight though.
Don't bottle it in, Shroob. Let it all out. It's good for the soul, you know?
Okay, you like having a boss fight with a single attack? You like having a boss fight with an extremely low amount of health even for a first boss fight? Well, apparently you do, because it isn't at the bottom of your list. What really impressed you with the boss fight? Because to me, there really isn't anything to it.
When judging this boss, I'm thinking back to playing this my first time. When comparing every boss past this in every game and their boss fights, yes, this boss fight is completely pathetic, because they're built to be more complex than this boss. However, with this being my first game I ever played in the Mario and Luigi series, you don't have any grasp to the reaction time to the attacking and counter-attacking that the series builds on. So I appreciate the low HP, the first time coordinating between two attacks from the boss, and learning your very first brother's attack, since it is really hard to time it for a first time player. Every first game in a series needs its training wheels, so while I think that Slashstar is underwhelming with my veteran glasses, I think he's very appropriate being the first boss in the series as he is. I think he's a fantastic introductory boss to prepare the player for what is to come.
Mentioning the bros attacks is actually a good point. The original game is super fast bros attacks that seem very difficult to master. I personally have played only the remake and not the original, and one big difference in between versions is the speed and difficulty of bros attacks. It's significantly slower and easier to pull off in the remake. At the very least, he is the most difficult enemy in Stardust Fields, and he does have some personality. None of these points will personally be able to save it for me, since just like Piranha Bean, he is a complete joke to me. As a way to introduce a new player into the Mario and Luigi games, I guess he can be considered okay, but anything outside of that just doesn't come close, which is why he is number 19.
Want to wiggler your way out of this one, Shroob?
Well, now I do.
Terrible joke for the win?
I think it's more of a win for me, because you get to do this entire segment without me. I hope the joke was worth it.
Hey, you dropped your dignity.
Just keep it. You'll need it to talk about one of the most bland bosses in this game.
Wow, he got out fast. Wiggler I ranked just above Slashstar at number 16, because while it is a nice introduction to a strategy at this point in the game, the main problem is that once you figure out that strategy, the fight is over in a blink of an eye. The strategy is neat though, which is why I give it the positive points that I do. Having to turn its body from red to yellow, at that point you can't hurt him directly, so it does have some variety going for it. But unfortunately, it probably wins the award from me for least replayable boss on this list because of its one and done nature. Once you've seen the magic trick once and know how it works, there's no more magic cards this boss has up his sleeves to prove anything more worthwhile about the boss. So, moving on.
Okay, I am back, and I definitely need to be back for this segment, especially because, wow. This set of bosses will be interesting to talk about. Not only are these bosses interesting, but this is the first part of the list where we had somewhat of a big difference. I have it towards the middle of the list where Slashstar is not too fond of these kids. Doesn't mean I love these kids either. I'm actually quite conflicted on how to feel. I guess I should talk about what really shined with these bosses to start off. I think that every single Koopaling fight has the basics of what I want for a fight in the Mario and Luigi games. These guys have solid attacks. You have a lot of bros attacks. They aren't pushovers like the other bosses we have talked about, which is much appreciated. And the time bombs were even a little nice concept for these later fights.
Well, my first problem is with the area. Bowser's Castle is my least favorite area in the game. It's a lot of rehashes with the same traversal skills you've been using throughout the game, so stack that with the Koopalings, then yeah, it makes me additionally miffed about the place. While I appreciate the positives that you did mention, they're really minute to me compared to the whole picture with the missed potential here. I think my main problem with the Koopalings is how similar they are, which doesn't help when coupled with the repetition of the overworld area, such as the duplicating technique, the big one stomping the ground, or using fireballs. I think I would have preferred if they put in 1 or 2 complete bosses as a replacement rather than 7 copycat bosses. So because of the double whammy with the flow and repetition for my personal taste, I'm not a big fan of the place or the bosses.
And you bring up exactly why I'm conflicted about these bosses. While they work separately as bosses themselves, having them back to back to back was just not a good idea. I get to a point where while I still like the bosses themselves, I wouldn't really want to keep them in the game, and they absolutely ruined Bowser's Castle. They were not needed, and I think we both agree on that. And since both of us are at this point, it is clear why it landed at 17 between the both of us.
I have so many mixed feelings about these 4 fights with Popple that I saved them last to rank on my list. I'll let you go first this time, Shroob. I'll follow your lead.
Well, at the very least, we have a similar opinion on this fight specifically, and I think I can speak for both of us saying that it's just not that great. Say what you want about Popple as a character, this fight is mediocre at best and downright boring at worst. Of course, this boss fight doesn't have many amazing attacks. Popple has only one, being him charging into you, and Bowser, Rookie only has one attack and the chance to have two. And not only is there only one attack for Rookie, it's actually a very slow and repetitive attack with you just counterattacking Hammer Bro Hammers for a long time. It's so agonizingly slow. And of course, another sin with this fight, they both die pretty easily. This will be a running trend for a lot of Superstar Saga bosses, but it truly does affect my opinion much more than I admit. At least it's them attacking twice per turn, which is nice, and attacking Popple will make Rookie attack you in response, which is some added difficulty, but it just isn't much.
When I was ranking this first fight with Popple, I was comparing it with the earlier fights such as Queen Bean and Dragahoho. Those fights had solid strategies to challenge the first time players, so when you get to this point past that and then get into fighting 2 bosses at once, it should be an improvement from those earlier boss fights. But imagine if you fought either one separately. They wouldn't work because nothing interesting is added on strategy wise. Once you get past the slow hammers, the slow thieving maneuvers, or the slow fireballs, there's not much more that happens dramatically in this fight. Even as a first time player, it was It could have been better both character wise and gameplay wise. It came and went from my perspective. That's why I ranked it as I did at number 15.
Oh, wow, a 10-spot difference from each other.
Kill. Die.
Yeah, Slashstar, you definitely need to start off first.
Gladly. Now, while I don't mind Popple attacking you alone, there's a major problem with this fight. At this point of the game, you're about 75% or 80% done with it, so the fight should be very difficult at this point. But Popple being downgraded to just being alone, which doesn't help him with being a weakling, this boss fight is an absolute joke. First, his thieving maneuvers are improved on his stealing hammers from the brothers, but that's not the issue. But that his cues to steal from the brothers is still the same from previous boss fights. So if you prevented him stealing from you in the previous fights, you can do it again. So he may not end up stealing your hammers after all. Next, while repeatedly throwing items from his bag is a noteworthy addition, there's 2 problems with it. 1, you can abuse it to heal yourself from the mushrooms he throws, and 2, it's a faster version of the stone ball move that Slashstar used in his elementary boss battle, making the move absolutely mute and being useful against the Mario Brothers. So from my perspective, a massive disappointment.
These are all fair points you do bring up. Him being alone is so much worse compared to him being together with Rookie. In theory, I think them being together without considering what Popple's attacks were beforehand is definitely a positive thing. But at least here, he has a significantly more unique arsenal of attacks. Instead of him just charging into you, he brings out the sack. Yes, it is a faster version of Slashstar's attack, but because it is faster, it's actually fun to dodge. And I actually like the addition of coins and mushrooms because you aren't just dodging everything in sight anymore, but instead trying to also focus on what he is throwing at you. I also think he got a significant health increase for this fight, which is so appreciated compared to the first 2 Popple fights. Now I can actually enjoy what he is bringing me in terms of his attacks instead of just saying they can be good. It's also nice that you have more interesting bros attacks. Would I have preferred it being 2 bosses and Popple having good attacks? Yeah, I would have. But how the boss is now, I definitely can't say I dislike it, which is why I had it so high.
Nicely put. I guess video games are supposed to be fun, so I'll give you points for that rebuttal. I looked at things more from how the difficulty stacked up to this point, and for me, that is important, which is why I'm mixed with these Popple fights overall because, they're not really that hard. But hey, I revere the minigames in Superstar Saga more than the other Mario and Luigi games because they are the most fun in this game, so I know where you are coming from. Fun is important too, I guess. Another Popple fight! Fantastic. Floor is all yours, Shroob.
I bet you're having a ton of fun talking about 3 Popple fights in a row.
Ecstatic.
Yeah. This is the second Popple and Rookie fight in the game, and it really doesn't feel that different from the first. Just like the last fight, there is the same really slow hammer and fire attacks with Rookie, and the charging attacks with Popple. That's all the fight is again. I guess the only reason I personally ranked it higher than the other one is mainly just because you have the Chopper and Knockback Bros in your arsenal. They are more interesting to use compared to Splash and Bounce Bros to me personally, so I had slightly more fun. And I know many people are gonna mention how interesting the Bros attack that Popple and Rookie have.
They do use 2 different brothers attacks, but it's really rare that they use them. The only time I've seen it in game was when I played it almost 20 years ago. It's why I docked it a little bit because I wish it was an essential move they used about midway through the battle, but it's very possible to knock down one of them before they even have the chance to use it.
I've seen one of them before, but I didn't even know there was a second one in existence until now. It would have been really cool to have them actually use this attack just as often as them using their basic attacks, since that is what you would do normally in the game with your own Bros attacks. This boss fight obviously has more health than the original fight as well, but it really doesn't feel like it. Overall, while this is a slightly improved version of the first fight, it doesn't do enough to stand out from it, and the new stuff it tries to do completely fails, which is why it deserves to be number 14.
We've got differences in how we feel about this boss, 7 rankings apart. Starting off and continuing on with my Slashstar reasoning, Huhuros is still a beginner boss battle. If you have played the entire series through and look back on this fight, it hasn't aged well. But the reason I think it makes a fantastic fight is how well it has aged for new players starting the series with this game, the other way around. After beating Slashstar, the strategy gets improved on a little bit from that battle. Instead of mindlessly jumping on everything, or in this case directly on Huhuro's hiding spot, it doesn't work. You have to try something else.
And that's why I see potential for this fight. The strategy seems really cool and is executed pretty perfectly for this fight. The problem for me comes in a couple of parts. His attacks are not great. They consist of just the pillar shooting lasers at the bro it is facing, and Huhuris itself shooting a laser from one bro to the other. It's not as basic as Slashstar's attacks, and later we'll talk about Dragahoho's attacks, but they do still feel very basic. I also think the obvious thing that is expected is the low amount of health that this boss fight has. I know it's very early in the game, but even for that stage it feels extremely weak. That's also combined with most players having advanced bounce bros. This move can attack both pillars in a single attack, which completely breaks the cool strategy this boss was going for.
Ooh, I don't think you know about this part, Shroob, but I think you touched on a major difference between the GBA and remake ports. In the GBA version, which I played through about 5 or 6 times, you only have one brother's attack for each brother at this point in the game, and advanced moves are not unlocked until you perform the move 20 times, making it strongly debated that the new player would 1. Not have the attack, and 2. Wouldn't know how to use it like I did my first time. The game doesn't outright tell you the commands for the advanced move either. As a veteran remake player, obviously you would know that, but beginners on the GBA version wouldn't know that potential strategy.
Okay, wow, 20 is a lot. The remake is way more generous in letting you get advanced moves in just 6 times using it, which I would definitely prefer. While the point does still stand, that would definitely knock it down for the casual player of the original. It personally doesn't change my opinion on it since the remake is what I am used to, but thank God that this change was made. Either way though, I think that this fight had some really interesting ideas put into it, and unlike the second Popple and Rookie fight, it was actually pulled off to some sort of success. While I don't like it more than that fight personally, I do respect what Huhurus tries to pull off, which is why it definitely deserves to be number 13. Okay, I'll forgive Huhurus being sent up this high against my control, but this fight?
10 ranks now. Are we going to fight to the death now?
I definitely am going to a bit. I will personally forgive Tolstar a little, having only a single basic attack because it's the first boss. But this fight has almost the exact same thing to me, but it's later in the game. All this boss fight does is shoot a fiery rock at each of the bros every single time. It's like the complaint I have with Rookie with his hammers, and it perfectly fits here. He also has this concept of being able to be shrunk by attacks like the Rexes in Huhu Mountain. It could be looked at as a cool callback, but to me it felt like it didn't add anything to the fight. I guess the random rock could have been cool, but all it does is just make the same attack he does just as difficult as if he was standing up. It kind of makes the main concept I mentioned previously feel almost pointless.
Not to sound like a broken record, but I think these beginner boss battles are fantastic in how they build on each other one after the next. Now with Huhuros done, a boss now spits out a rock, making the new player wonder what the heck the boss is up to now. When I first played it, I thought a baby dragon was going to come out of the rock or something. When Dragahoho jumped on the rock, suddenly the difficulty gets turned up to 11 in dodging his attacks, and now priority is given to destroy that thing as soon as possible. Again, just like Huhuros, the game is teaching you that attacking the boss directly won't win you the battle if something else is beefing at the boss too much as a threat. That's why I think it's a bloody, fantastic example of a boss fight.
I think it can be looked at as interesting if you don't know what the heck is going on with that weird rock, but when you know, the surprise factor is gone.
Can't you say that about any boss fight though? Once you have the strategy down, then you can rinse and repeat until they're down. What's the difference here?
Good question. And I'll use the boss fight that we just talked about as an example. Huhurus' concept, while it can be easily broken, is definitely still intact, since you still need to go through with the strategy of breaking down the pillars in the right way to win the fight. Here it doesn't work since the rock isn't adding something that is new to the fight. Like you mentioned, it wasn't the rock as a concept that blew you away. It was mainly just a surprise factor that startled you that made the feeling stick. And now that you mention it, it would have been awesome to have a baby dragon come out of that rock. Or egg in this case. I absolutely love when bosses use minions since it adds another layer to the fight naturally. But this isn't an egg, it's just a plain old rock to stand on, which is significantly more boring.
So kind of like if you attack the rock, a baby dragon or minion would come out, and if you don't destroy it, then the boss would hop on it to make its attacks more accurate. Kind of like a choose your poison type of battle.
Nah, just give me the baby dragon, that sounds way more fun. I also obviously think that this fight has way too little HP, but that's a given and I've said it for multiple fights, so I won't elaborate.
Of course. So on one hand, if you look at it from a beginner perspective, it's a fantastic boss battle, and then there's Shroob who is wrong.
Hey, watch it.
Alright, fair enough. We have our differences and personal preferences, and hey, if I dislike Popple 3, you've got fair game on bosses you're less favorable of.
Remember when I said that I like when bosses have minions? Here is Mom Piranha. It's a fight that exists. That's something, I guess.
Are you having unmemorable boss syndrome?
Sadly, yes. This is easily the most forgettable boss in this game, and I don't even know why. I finished this game around 2 weeks before writing this exact line for the script, and I just don't remember anything without looking at footage of Superstar Saga.
I think the main problem and why this boss is incredibly forgettable is because it doesn't exhibit any personality. The Mario and Luigi series is chock full of colorful personalities, like you have Hermie the third fight who gets mad when his shell isn't getting decorated. Bubbles and the Chuckleator brought up a unique joking and intimidation pair scenario. With Mom Piranha, it doesn't talk and is just there on the runway with no introduction or setup. It's there and then it's gone.
That definitely could be part of it. Mom Piranha truly isn't a character in this game. It's an obstacle. And that definitely can solve why the boss itself is a forgettable presence in the game, because after you get rid of it, nothing really comes from the defeat. But that doesn't completely solve why the fight itself is forgettable to me. I know I liked it, but I think that's it. I just liked it and moved on.
The boss fight itself is the same problem. It uses 2 attacks, a fireball and a vine sweep on the Mario Brothers, and then once you figure out that the 2 piranha plant minions will repeatedly keep reacting to you attacking Mom Piranha, the battle starts to become a blur and a dull cycle. You attack, the minions react, Mom Piranha attacks, and then the cycle repeats endlessly. While the strategy is admittedly a step up in using the hand power such as to cut the healing of the boss or get him mixed piranha plant colors, the cycle becomes way too predictable and fast that the details start to blur your mind, making this fight become like a school test. Once you got it studied and done with, you forget everything about it afterwards. At least that's how I look at it.
That's how it is for me too. I don't really see that as too negative though, because I definitely remember being satisfied with the concept and the attacks from both the minions and Mom Piranha herself. Now that you talk about it though, I think the true main reason why this is the most forgettable fight in the game, for me, is just how middle of the road it is. Nothing here stands out to me at all. Anything that can be mentioned for this fight just flies over my head, either because it isn't that interesting to me, or it is used in other fights, most of the time in a better light. This does work both ways though. Even though nothing positive stands out for me about this fight, nothing negative does either. I kinda just went through this fight feeling meh throughout it, but nothing bothered me at all.
Kind of like an average video game. It's so average that it doesn't matter about the good or bad qualities. You just forget it.
And hey, that can definitely be a somewhat positive thing. I did put the boss at number 10 after all, so even though I thought it didn't stand out to me compared to other bosses, it was a fine enough boss that didn't really have anything singing it down, which is why it lands right under the top 10 in our combined list.
This was a fun talk. It's really neat to delve into why these things are so unmemorable even though they have some really good qualities behind the boss.